Heterodox Views of Money and Modern Monetary Theory, MMT, by Phil Armstrong. Concluding Remarks. It seems to me that the mainstream view of money is highly unsatisfactory, or, to put it another way, the good story turns out to be not so good after all. A theory of money must find supporting evidence if it is to be taken seriously. Credit and state theories do just that. They are complementary and provide a sound basis for modeling a monetary economy. It is my belief that MMT produces models which are consistent with these approaches of analyzing money. Thus, MMT enables us to understand the fundamental mechanisms at play in the monetary system and, importantly, to distinguish between the nature of the core or operational reality in different types of monetary systems. There is a highly significant difference, which cannot be overstressed, between the core reality of a monetary system where a government issues its own fiat currency under floating exchange rates, and fixed exchange rate systems such as the gold standard, the Bretton Woods system, and monetary unions such as the European Monetary Union, EMU, where euro-using nations have ceded their monetary sovereignty to the European Central Bank. In the latter case, the ECB is the currency issuer, and member states are effectively forced to act as currency users. I consider that it is analytically useful to explicitly separate the core or operational reality from the socio-political layer. Such a separation allows us to distinguish those features which are intrinsic to the operation of the monetary system, and those which are merely parts of a surrounding socio-political layer. We may consider the latter as externally or self-imposed constraints. Should a nation decide to join the gold standard or a fixed exchange rate system, external constraints, especially with regards to fiscal and monetary policy decisions, follow and become embedded in the political layer. These constraints are essential requirements that allow the system to function without unbearable strain being placed on the economy. However, once no such external constraints exist, that is, when a country issues its own fiat currency under floating exchange rates, much of what was once an essential element of the socio-political layer required to support the operation of bygone monetary system now becomes a matter of choice. The retention of former modes of behavior which were once necessary now becomes the voluntary acceptance of unnecessary constraints. A different core monetary reality exists when countries issue their own fiat, non-convertible currency. In this situation, governments are never revenue constrained. Government spending or lending always precedes taxation or bond sales. The central bank cannot carry out a reserve drain before a reserve add. This argument seems irrefutable on logical grounds. In this real world, the need for sound finance and market-led interest rates disappears. They are anachronisms. That are irrelevant. In the new core reality, the level of government spending needs to be adjusted so as to satisfy non-government sector tax liability and net saving demands at the full employment level of income. Deficit levels and debt ratios per se become unimportant in themselves, and the state can use its position as monopoly issuer of the currency to control the whole spectrum of interest rates. Requirements such as debt ceilings, prohibitions of direct debt sales to the central bank, and the illegality of treasury overdrafts at the central bank are seen merely as voluntary constraints. They are not part of the true operational reality, and if a political decision was made to remove them, the core monetary reality would still function in the same way. An understanding of MMT allows a clear distinction to be made between different core monetary realities and their impact on the relationship between the operation of the monetary system and the socio-political layer in countries with their own currencies, such as the USA, the UK, and Japan, and those without, for example, euro-using nations. It contends that, in the case of the latter, taxes and bond sales do fund public spending in an operational sense and are no longer considered to be voluntary constraints. I accept that such an analytical division between a core monetary system and a socio-political layer as part of the fabric of a socio-economic reality and as indispensable to the way capitalism operates in the real world. They consider them to be part of an unwritten social compact in which taxation must be seen as financing public spending. The tax-paying public accepts its tax obligation because this money is needed to pay for public services, and bond sales providing interest rates are the reward to the rentier class. In this view, they are not voluntary additions to the system, but an intrinsic part of its social reality. In this view, removal of the so-called voluntary constraints may reduce the system's ability to function efficiently or even destroy it completely. So we might contend with it that acceptance or rejection of the validity of the analytic division is based on differing ontological views of the essential nature of a monetary economy. An understanding of the applicability of the analytical division allows an economist to understand the origin of criticisms which may be leveled at advocates of MMT. We might consider the fundamental origin of these criticisms to be ontological. For critics of MMT, the so-called voluntary constraints are no such thing. They remain part of the operational reality, and economic models need to take account of this. For critics, the dichotomy is false. Of course, criticisms of MMT come from many sources. For example, even those broadly sympathetic to the use of MMT are often ardent critics of MMT. For example, even those broadly sympathetic to the use of MMT are often ardent critics of MMT's use of a consolidated treasury and central bank in their models, denying its validity. See Lavoie 2011 for a friendly critique and Pally 2014 for a less than friendly assault. The application of the analytic tradition allows us to understand the basis for this critique. For advocates of MMT, it is perfectly reasonable to consolidate the Treasury and the central bank when analyzing operational reality. Indeed, should a nation wish to consolidate its central bank with its treasury in public ownership, with both institutions explicitly working together to pursue public purpose, it would have the ability to do so. More importantly, whether or not politics dictates that the two are considered as one or two entities, in reality, treasuries and central banks must act in cooperation in the day-to-day operation of the monetary system if it is to function effectively. For critics, the separation is part of core reality, capturing the true nature of the system, making consolidation invalid. The implication is that, for critics of MMT, the separateness is essential for the efficient functioning of the core monetary system, or, at least, is so widely considered to be so within the socioeconomic environment that consolidation is a practical impossibility. It seems that, from this perspective, the debates between MMT economists and their critics, both hostile and friendly, are essentially ontological in nature and based upon different views of what really counts as reality in a capitalist system. For supporters of MMT, the division between the Treasury and the central bank is a matter of political choice. Consolidation, far from impairing the function of the system, would support its function by removing unnecessary impediments to its effectiveness. Going further, it seems to me that an openly accountable consolidated central bank and treasury pursuing public purpose would deliver the best results for the population, and a monetary model based on this is effectively provided by MMT. Central bank independence is a utopian project and can never be fully practically realized. It is also fundamentally undemocratic. In general, The central bank could easily be absorbed within a consolidated treasury and bank department with full political accountability being gained. Quote Mitchell, 2015. Such a situation may seem a long way off, and perhaps getting further away. However, even in the current situation, MMT provides the best monetary models out there and highlights the existence of additional policy space acquired by sovereign states since Nixon closed the gold window and most nations adopt floating exchange rates. We just need to encourage the use of the space to enhance the living standards of ordinary people. The adoption of the self-regulating market, in particular, with reference to the market for money, the introduction of the gold standard was a peculiar event. Viewed in Pollyannian terms, it involved the disembedding of markets and required the structure and operation of the socio-political layer to become subjugated to the needs of the system. For current advocates of the efficient markets hypothesis, this time is viewed with great nostalgia. The gold bugs are still out there. However, most nations now have a new core monetary reality, allowing democratic governments to re-embed markets. However, this is not enough. The political layer must change and reflect this new underlying reality. Optimists, and there are many of us out there, still believe that, eventually, after the neoliberal storm has passed, a recognition of this new scope for improving living standards will emerge. We might hope that Polanyi's words come to fruition and socialism again reasserts itself. Quote, Socialism is essentially the tendency inherent in an industrial civilization to transcend the self-regulating market by consciously subordinating it to a democratic society. It is the solution natural to industrial workers who see no reason why production should not be relegated directly and why markets should be more than a useful but subordinate trait to a free society. End quote. Polanyi, 1944, page 242.